Development Committee meeting. We will start our committee meeting. It's 9:31 a.m. on August 21st. Action is seeking approval of our July 22nd committee meeting minutes. If I could get a motion for that, a first by Supervisor Cressito and a second by Supervisor Turner. Any comments about those minutes? I'll call the question. All in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries. Next, privilege of the floor. Any public comment from the public? From supervisors? Move into our action agenda for workforce development. A is to request to renew an agreement with Big Brothers Big Sisters of the Southern Adirondacks. Liza?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everybody. This is a request for our new agreement with Big Brothers Big Sisters for this coming fall. You may recall the last few years, probation department had a grant for this mentoring program. And then when that money ran out, we took it over to keep that program going. So local youth in our community can have a mentor at a local municipality, organization, or business and receive a stipend for some of that learning. So this contract and the cost is just to help cover their staff that support this program. And we did reduce it last year from 15,000 to 10,000 this year, just as we are trying to be more conservative with our spending, predicting some federal budget cuts. Happy to answer any questions.
Got this in your budget line.
Yes.
Of
Make the motion to approve.
Supervisor Stroud and a second by Supervisor Cressito. Any discussion? I'll call the question on resolution request A. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries. B, resolution request to transfer funds related to New World allocations.
Thank you. So this, just as a friendly reminder, our fiscal year is July to June. So now we're in the summer where we're looking at our funding from the previous year. We are allowed some carryover. And this is just to move some money around within our budget to help us spend those dollars more efficiently. I did bring our fiscal coordinator, Jesse, with us in case there's any questions about these transfers.
Somebody like to make a motion on that? First by Supervisor Stroud and a second by Supervisor Turner. Any discussion on B? Transfers are listed in the packet. I'll call the question. All in favor of approving resolution request B, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries into request C to review Saratoga Warren Washington Workforce Development Board budget.
And Gretchen has joined us, the executive director of the Workforce Board, so she is happy to present the request and answer any questions the committee may have.
I don't know how familiar everybody is with the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. That's what funds the Workforce Board, as well as the 3 career centers in Saratoga, Warren, and Washington counties. We get about $2.25 million right now. We've had some budget cuts through the years, but we get about $1.9 million through the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. And we get about $600,000 from the Summer Youth Employment Program, which comes down to us through the Office of Disability Services. So with that fund, we have an allocation formula that we use to break the money down into the 3 centers. So the Workforce Board office, it was me for about 4 years, and now the last year we've had a deputy director that we've added. Part of the purpose for that is succession planning. I was originally going to be retiring at the end of this year, but I've extended another 6 months because of the tentativeness of the WIOA funding. Although I'm happy to report that I finished reading the report. So President Trump put an executive order out in the summer with requirements for the Secretaries of Labor, Commerce, and Education to work together to identify all the workforce programs across the United States of America and how they can become more efficient. And so as a result of that, he asked for 2 reports to come out. One was a July 23rd deadline. The other was an October 23rd deadline. And the report came out just on Monday. And I feel pretty confident right now that WIOA will continue to be funded There was a great deal of discussion over the last 8 months when the continuing resolution didn't pass at the end of December. It was December of 2024. The Congress and then the Senate had put together something called the Stronger Workforce for America Act, which would continue to fund WIOA. And when it wasn't put into the continuing resolution, it left our funding and all the workforce boards and the centers across the country vulnerable. And so after I read the report that came out on Monday, I feel pretty strongly that the administration is going to continue to fund WIOA. Originally, they were talking about putting it in with 13 other funding streams to make it a community service block grant, which would have been very difficult to administer. WIOA is very difficult to administer anyway, because it's a government program with many reporting entities. But I really believe that based on what I read yesterday, WIOA will be necessary, and it appears that the U.S. and Department of Labor is leading the dance, and with the focus on registered apprenticeships. And, you know, some of the initiatives that we're looking at and trying to channel our energies toward is that are the same things that are part of this plan. So there aren't a lot of new things. What will be new is the mechanisms that the federal government has to put in place to deliver on the promises of this new workforce world that we're in right now. So there's a lot at play. So I've told my executive committee and then the board at our July 30th meeting that I'll extend for another 6 months. So I plan to leave on June 30th of next year, which is the end of our fiscal year. So hopefully we'll have the structures in place. But one of the things we have been doing is when we didn't know whether we would continue to exist or whether our funding would be significantly cut, we're really dissecting the finances of the system right now. The deputy director, I repurposed her. She was originally supposed to be half-time working with me for the succession purposes, because we have a lot of deliverables. We report to the New York State Department of Labor, but also we have 3 counties that we report to. We have that multi-jurisdictional agreement. So we have to go through committee processes to get things approved, things like that. So we have many reporting structures. So our deputy director was going to be doing some of that. I redeployed her to look at some safety management. Through the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, we are measured by 16 different things. And it's the people that come into our center. We get 3 buckets of money: adult, dislocated worker, and youth. The youth we serve: in-school youth, out-of-school youth. And the initial body of law said that we need to spend 75% of our youth money on out-of-school youth. Those are kids that have dropped out of school. The workforce board directors were able to lobby the New York State Department of Labor to get that split at 50-50. Post-COVID, I think all of us know that we really need to invest a lot more in our young people to be able to work on career development and help them aspire, you know, to viable careers where they can earn a good living and have a good benefit structure in place. So we've been able to do that based on some of the information that I read in the report on Monday. I also think that we might be able to successfully lobby a change in that. And the workforce board directors had originally asked New York State to change that so that it was 25% on out-of-school youth and 75%. So completely switch the way the laws are regulated, because we really do have to invest more in young people at the middle school level. And that report on Monday specifically targeted middle school as when young people should be making career decisions. So we need to invest more. Right now, the measurement structure that's in place, those 16 things that we're measured on, does not support spending time on that middle school population, where they're looking at more measurements that come from high school dropouts. And so that has to shift. So that's another one of the, you know, that's an example of the mechanisms that have to change in how we do business. We always highly restricted money, and we have to do a lot of logistics. Jesse, as a new person to the institution, could speak to that. It is very complicated to spend our money because of all the restrictions and all the reporting entities. So all that said, we hope that we put some structures in place that are going to help us look at our org. So that's the 3 career centers as well as the workforce board, and how we can more efficiently operate. And so right now, we are meeting our numbers. I talked about the three funding streams: adults, dislocated workers, and youth. And so we're hitting our numbers for adult and dislocated worker. We're not hitting our numbers for youth. And so we have to look a bit more purposefully on how we can meet the expectations that are set for us in the youth arena. So that's a little bit about the broad general overview. And I'll answer any questions that you have.
Let's get this on the floor if we can. We have a motion, a first from Supervisor Stroh and a second from Supervisor Turner. Questions from the committee? Supervisor Stroh?
So the federal government's new directive to be more efficient. And I think that, if I understand it correctly, is tied to this 13 criteria. One of which is to target middle school students who have a particular character that you want to capture and try and get them into workforce mode. Do I understand that correctly?
They've said that in broad general terms, but we're measured 16 ways, but
16.
16 ways.
Okay.
And it's people who come into our center, for example, who we help, who gets a credential. So when Liza's group, for example, writes individual training accounts or grants for people to get a certain kind of training, then once they get that, they get credit for a credential. So our system gets credit for that. When the GED students finish a portion of the GED program, then they can get a measurable skills gain. So there are all these different ways that we're measured. But the plan is very broad and general. And now the devil will be in the details about how we focus our energies on the right populations. Because we know that in the United States of America, the labor force participation rate has been declining, but also there's less young people than there once was. So our population numbers are remarkably low. And so we have to do with what we have. And so we do have to refocus energies. The how, it's not in that plan. It's broad and general. So.
Thank you.
Other questions? Supervisor Wild?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Gretchen, what is the distribution between the three counties? I see that we have basically $67,000 for Warren County. What's the separation between Warren, Washington, and Saratoga?
Well, the total population of our three areas, we have 355,000. And so Saratoga County has about 240,000 of that. Warren County is about 65,000 population, and Washington County was 62,000. The latest census tells us it's down a few thousand people. But our formulas are based on lots of different things. And it's not just population. Population is one factor, but the other factors are the number of people who are unemployed in each county. Then there are other factors the Department of Labor provides us with: long-term unemployed. And those are people on the list that have exhausted their unemployment and are no longer working, but are of eligible age to work. Some of the other things that come into play is how much industry you have, how many mass layoffs there have been. And so there are many different factors that go into our calculations. And a lot of the data that we get is retrospective. So it's things that happened 2 years ago, is what some of the formulas are based on, because the data has a lag in it.
So it's 68,000 for Warren, 67,000. What's Washington? Do you have it off the top of your head? Who's Washington's?
I don't have the allocation with me, but they get less than Warren County does.
So the significant funding is coming from Saratoga.
Yes,
All right.
Saratoga County is the fiscal agent for the system. They're the grant recipient. So the money comes down through Saratoga County, and then the director of that the Department of Workforce Development is also the fiscal agent for our system. So they provide the allocations, and the allocation formulas have been in place for some time. I've been here about 5 years, and the fiscal manager has been here over 14 years, and those formulas have not changed.
Okay, so one more, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman. I'm just curious, if there's these 18 metrics, how is Warren County doing in the metrics as compared to Saratoga and Washington?
Actually, all the three centers are meeting their adult and dislocated worker metrics. We had a little bump on dislocated workers, but that obviously changes, like when a plant like Essity closes and they've got a location in Washington County, and then a lot of their employees live in Warren County, and then they've got two operations in Saratoga County. But we're all failing youth, all three career centers are failing in the youth measures. There are just not enough people, there are not enough of youth in the system that meet the WIOA criteria. So one of the strengths that Warren County has is they're doing a tremendous amount of investment in the job fairs and career fairs for high schools in the area. But we don't get any credit for that as far as a WIOA measurement goes, unless those people enroll in services. If somebody, for example, is in Liza, what's the term when somebody is taking that foster care? Sorry, the term left me. So if somebody's in foster care, for example, they go to a career fair, they're interested in some help and support, then they can enroll in our programs, and then we would get credit for them. So, but there are income qualifications. So if students have a background where they are living at the poverty level, then they are absolutely able to integrate right into our system. We get credit for them. In 2014, the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act changed a bit. That was during the Obama administration. And the criteria became more stringent for qualifying for the WIOA dollars, because they wanted to impact more underserved communities and lower income individuals that were 200% of the poverty level. And so that's when it changed.
If I can add to that, of the three counties, I would argue that we're doing the most around youth programming, not just the job fairs and the expos, but we have staff that are designated to work with the school districts, preparing students for interviews, resumes, et cetera. But to Gretchen's point, those things aren't always counted. And then there's also been some data entry issues. So if Department of Labor is measuring our performance off data entry in a system that they are working on upgrading, the system has very many issues. That also is why we're seeing lower numbers and success of our youth data for our Tri-County area. A lot of data entry issues. That has been addressed with the deputy director's assistance of the board. And those reports have been shared with, Chairman Garrity and our county administrator as well about our performance on these measures, as well as our financial report performance. Our recent audit came back with no findings for our finances. So we're doing really great work. I would love to have more people doing this work. Because we know that our county doesn't have enough people to fill all the jobs, and we need to keep local youth here as into adults. So I'm very confident that for Warren County, our numbers will be fine. But working as a system, the three counties, we can continue to collaborate to figure out how we can improve those youth numbers.
And I also think that the summer youth employment money is our best opportunity to get the kids into the system that we can help, and also so that we can get credit for our performance numbers. Because those are in order to qualify to be part of the summer youth employment program, you have to have a low income or be folks that are impacted as I just described.
So Liza, do you need additional funding for youth?
Well, we have our budget meeting tomorrow, which we'll talk about for those of you that are there. If pie in the sky dreams, yes, I would have another person working in youth. I would have a person who supports people with criminal records. I would have a deputy director to do a lot of administrative stuff that I don't always have the time to do. But we work well with whatever we are allocated. And Jesse and I are being conservative and making cuts where we can around supplies to make sure that our county staff jobs are secure and that our programming and services to the public are secure. So as of now, and to Gretchen's point as well, with not seeing anything on the near horizon for funding cuts, we're just being fiscally conservative a little bit in case down the road there are some more cuts.
For questions?
I think maybe so. With the gap in the workforce, all right, this is impacting our local economy. I'm wondering what else we can do.
So I serve on the as co-chair of the Workforce Development Committee for New York State Tourism Industry Association. They're gathering here in a couple of weeks, actually, at Fort William Henry. And one of the things that we're working on is, just like there's a program for international students, we really want students across New York State to know that this is an area they can come to for summer work. And so we're looking at, scaling that down to a regional plan. So that's one thing. And then I'm working with the tourism director on revisiting 365 tourism, because that, of course, will increase our revenue, and different initiatives and people responsible for those initiatives. For example, so who's going to be responsible for the environmental factors around 365 tourism? I would be responsible for the 365 workforce, right? So those are some of the things that we're working on long-term to address these issues.
And just one more, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind. Johnsburg and the development that's going on there with Gore, as well as the expansion of opportunities for business to come into that area, is it has a big gap in terms of their workforce. Any thoughts about how we can adjust that and react to it?
Yeah, I've shared before that our people shortage is directly related to our housing shortage, and that's above my pay grade. And I really wish that if we address housing, I know that if housing issues are addressed adequately, then that will help us get more people to do these jobs. For now, that is why we continue to emphasize the young people that are already here, keeping them here, right? They're already living here. Which is separate than, of course, recruiting from the outside. We can't recruit from the outside, other counties or regions, or even states, because we don't have housing here for those people.
One more. If my understanding is, there's a lot of housing development that's happening. Do we have any idea what percentage of that's going to be for workforce housing as compared to just regular general housing?
No, we don't have those statistics, but it's too small. And the other problem that we face both in Warren, so I'm in the middle of writing a local plan. I have to do that every 4 years. It's a strategic plan for the area. And then once I get that done, we have to confer with Columbia Green and Capital Region to put together a regional plan. It talks about where the jobs are growing. And so hospitality and accommodations are areas that are growing in size and demand, just because we have a lot of people retiring to this area. And so we have developments that are also resort properties and things like that. And so that's going to require more folks in the tourist and accommodation. I think in order to be able to help with that, we are already working with CDTA on transportation. We're so excited about the Glens Falls to Saratoga line. But I know that Warren County Economic Development has been working on a bus route from here to North Creek. And so that would be an opportunity to move people to be able to go work in those areas. But the other piece, I think, in the new WIOA or the revised WIOA will be the apprenticeship. So as a human resource person in my background, when the New York State Department of Labor talked about pre-apprenticeship, I've actually talked to Commissioner Reardon and I said, I think you should really stop talking about that. And she was offended. But I'm like, the labor laws, both state and federal, prevent young people from engaging in using mechanized equipment, volatiles. And so don't talk about pre-apprenticeship programs if we're not going to change the labor laws for apprenticeship programs. And so I think that that provides us with a great opportunity. So if the federal government and President Trump is 8 months into his administration, so we have 3 years left to put the legs under this stool, is that if we can start to get young people into pre-apprenticeship programs where they can be exposed to building skills and opportunities to be able to define what they want for their desired future, then I think we have a better chance of filling some of the gaps. And even getting those folks who are not part of the labor force participation numbers right now back into the labor force, because there's something everyone can do. We've been trying to recruit retirees into the accommodations and tourism industry because we can't fill it with full-time regular folks. If you go, and Vinnie Cristino could talk to this about in Lake George, how many J1s are keeping Lake George alive right now. So we need to be able to supplement that with folks from our area. The senior population would be one option.
Supervisor Pacito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But I just want to add to that just you bring up a good point. At Holiday Inn, for example, over the last 15 years, we've seen a dramatic shift in the expectation of the employer and the expectation of the employee. There's a huge gap there, and you have to start early with it. And so we have 120 employees there right now. We've had to hire 40 J1s and H-2B visas to fill that gap. So a third of our workforce has now shifted to outside. And one of the biggest reasons is expectations. And it just gets to the point where it's just difficult, and I don't know how to say it, in any other way. That just so many of our youth are just not willing to meet the expectations of what we're looking for. For example, you can't have, AirPods on while you're vacuuming hallways. It's not up to debate all the time. You can't, text all the time. It's expectations, and that needs to start early. It needs to start in a more structured, environment. And that, I'm glad you're saying, 8th grade and some of the early ones. And I think even Christine Duffy had mentioned that they offered a class at ACC for, and I don't know the name of the class, but it was about employee expert. We can teach you how to, the skills of a job. Now, how do you bring those skills to work and meet our expectations, So, for us, when we've noticed a huge gap in that over the years, and it's a challenge, it really is, so.
And by the way, SUNY Adirondack did put during their strategic planning process, they had industry leaders in the area. I was fortunate enough to be part of that, where they have designed a program. I had called it the 13th year. It's not quite that, but it's for those kids who are not going to college. Maybe they haven't gone to BOCES yet and don't have a specific trade, and they're not sure what they're going to do next. So there's a program that SUNY Adirondack is going to be offering in short order to be able to introduce young people to those, what I'll call professional skills in the workplace, be there on time as expected.
Yeah, it's not okay it's not a half an hour gap. If you're supposed to be there at 3, it's not, I'll get there before 3:30, It's.
And those employability skills, as you saw last week, were some of those 5 employability skills we focused on with summer youth. Is reinforced through teaching, through incentives and awards, but also with our work with the school districts. With many of them really focusing on career and technical education, they are incorporating more of those professional skills now.
Yeah, and I've worked with that program. I've had kids from there and they've all worked out well.
Okay.
Supervisor Stroh.
Workforce housing is a whole lot easier said than done, because you're competing with market forces. So you have housing, you want it to be in an area where there's municipal transportation or walkability to the work areas and so forth. Well, those also are prime areas for your developer. So you have market forces saying, okay, well, I can build this building of 100 apartments, and I can get $3,000 an apartment. So it is going to pay for itself. I'm gonna make myself a profit. That's not affordable for your workforce housing. I mean, what's affordable? What we see now is a lot of times gathering 3 or 4 people in a hotel room or some other apartment and sharing the expenses and making it affordable. Because, you know, most of these people are not making 6 figures. So how does affordable or workforce housing happen? You know, with the market forces being as strong as they are. So I know, yeah, we need workforce housing. Well, how do you do that?
I was impressed to see the Sagamore do it from a private standpoint. They built 110, very affordable for their workforce only. But to see the private sector do it for themselves, which to your point would have been prime land to build on for themselves for more lodging, I would assume, but they, you know.
But again, that's a private developer working on their own
And less common,
self-interest.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're well capitalized.
Yeah,
If I could. There's a few strategies that you could pursue. I mean, the town and village of Lake George has worked on a workforce housing strategy. You know, on the municipal side of things, you can, you know, identify and secure a parcel of land, an appropriate location, and then from there, you know, on the municipal side, you can ensure that you've got your infrastructure and then also your local approvals in place, whether it's, you know, planning and zoning and just general public acceptance of the need for workforce housing. And then from there, you could do a few different things. I mean, the likely model that works, and I think it was explored a bit in Lake George, was, you know, you work with a, you know, a private entity that specializes in things like workforce housing. That can also help with the management of it. But you need to have a few things in place on the local level. There needs to be consensus around the need for it, and then probably some consensus on the municipal side of the government that, hey, this is an investment or an effort that's worth undertaking. And then you develop those partnerships with people that are proficient at providing it. And you know, you could work with folks like the EDC to connect these possible private entities with homes and community renewal, you know, funding programs, tax incentives. Then you could work with like the Warren Washington IDA and their tax breaks. You know, it takes a variety of factors on the local, regional, and state level to make it happen.
federal.
Yeah, and state programs too.
Yeah, we got it. No,
Yeah.
so. Yeah.
Supervisor Weil.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. In regards to the workforce housing issue, a number of years back, Extended Family and I had a conversation. They're out in California where they actually have within their, I will imagine it's zoning, where they have not mixed use, but high-end apartments as well as workforce housing in the same facilities. Right, and maybe that's a way that we might be able to do that. I'm not sure if legally we can enforce that. But that's one way to be able to handle this. If you have 100 units, right? You have some high-end units and you also have some workforce housing units. And I think it would be a big benefit to our community to have that mixture also.
Yeah, those are mandatory set asides. You can establish that by local law where, you know, you can set a certain percentage of the new housing units as, you know, affordable or, you know, workforce or whatever locally designated criteria that you have. And then in exchange, you work with the developer of the, you know, market rate or luxury stuff, and the municipality in turn provides incentives to those folks, whether that's an increased density of units or relief from some other local conditions. So you have, you know, you can incentivize that. So it's a combination of, you know, regulatory, you know, mandatory set asides and, you know, these incentives as well.
So I have 2 town supervisors right next to me over here. Is that something that we could do from a
Well-
town standpoint?
You go ahead.
How are you going to assure it? Do you hire, outsource an entity to monitor that, and that's gonna be an additional cost to the municipality?
Or additional cost to facility?
but then you're dealing with market forces. Why would I develop workforce development if I got all these extra expenses?
I think that's where the incentive would come in from, increasing allowable densities, right? So instead of just getting, 10 market rate units, maybe you have a clause in your zoning that says, all right, now you're getting 14. And then in turn, you provide the workforce housing. So the developer benefits from the increased profitability of their property. And then the municipality could benefit from,
Who assures that?
there's a variety of different administrative ways, but you probably require that the developer report certain criteria on a regular basis. It's certainly complicated, yeah. And if it's a novel approach for a lot of municipalities around here, it would certainly there'd be a learning curve involved, but there's a lot of models to look at across the country.
County Administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Being on the IDA, I'll tell you that what Ethan's kind of hinted to this, but what we found is someone that's going to build a 10, 15, 20 unit apartment complex is not going to be able to afford the land and the construction cost and then turn it into workforce housing because it just won't turn a profit. So what you need is, and we're not sure what the sweet spot is, but there's got to be a sweet spot someplace. 400 unit apartment complex probably can set aside apartments for workforce housing in that complex and still make a profit overall. That's the key, but we haven't been able to kind of find that sweet spot on what it is. But most of our developments that we're seeing now are in the 10, 15, 20, up to maybe 50 unit apartments. And that 50 unit apartment is really, that's a stretch to get there.
Supervisor Cressida.
To our administrator's point, Lake Judd had implemented double density, right? As I'm sure you know, and the Gross project is capitalizing on that a bit. But it's still and going back to the developer that wanted to come in for the workforce housing, he was going to build that for $400 a square foot. It wasn't even going to have their own kitchens in it, shared kitchen. So there's a lot of obstacles. It was coming off the tax rolls. We got a lot of pushback from the community. So it's I don't know what the answer is, but certainly creating better paying jobs helps. And I think if you look at a town like Lake George, we have most of the businesses have solved the problem or tried to solve the problem themselves. I mean, Fort William Henry, Marriott, us, we bought properties and made them nice and that's one of the answers, but it's very difficult. Construction costs are high. Density doesn't allow you to build enough units to make it worthwhile. And, now you got even more regulation coming through New York State as January 1st, right? Every unit you build's got to be sprinkled, and I don't know if it's Ansel system, but and no more gas run to the unit, so it's all electric. So there's some challenges. I don't know how to overcome. I don't know what the answer is without, federal government help. Of course, pilot programs, taking them off the tax rolls, which always is a pushback, and increasing the density so you could get more units up, But, Lake George is putting 400 units up, so we'll see. And that's supposed to be somewhat affordable for $1,400 to $2,000 a month. So hopefully that helps.
All right, the resolution request is to review and approve. The budget looks flat except for the top part, and so seeing significant increases in salaries, but significant decreases in benefits. And that provides a 1.1 increase overall in the budget. It says benefits through Saratoga County. Is the 1% are the formula you described, Gretchen, earlier still applies?
1% is just a 1% increase over last year's
Yeah.
budget.
Right.
But the salary increases is because of the contract, the CSEA contract. And so I am employed by Saratoga County, as is my deputy. So when their civil service contract was settled, we got all of the increases that they got as management confidential people. So we'll continue to get I think it's 2.75% increases per year. but our structure will change because I will only be there through June of next year.
Yep.
And by that time, we'll just have to regroup. I think the legislation for WIOA will either be cemented or we'll have a better direction of where we are right now. And so we will have to look at that. And I mentioned a little earlier, we're looking at the finances of the entire system as well as the deliverables and outputs. And so we'll probably be coming up with another structure before next fiscal year, next program year, which is July 1st of 2026.
Your budget is proposed to go up less than $4,000 for the year from last year.
Yes.
Other questions on resolution request C? I'll call the question. All in favor of reviewing and approving the budget for next year? Please say aye. That carries. Our clerk of the board stated that resolution request D can be withdrawn, that we have an intern and volunteer policy in place that should cover that request need. You want to go into discussion review items, Liza?
Sure, and we've already had some very fruitful discussion around the status of our workforce, so I'll try to keep this brief. Generally, our unemployment rate for July just came out last week. We're at 3.1. It only went up slightly from 2.8. Our unemployment rate in Warren County is still below state rate and national rate, so that's good. We are working with Department of Labor and on data trends that they're seeing. They are starting to see some industries not adding as many jobs as they were in the past. But because we still have plenty of jobs here in our community, we're not seeing impacts yet with that. Regarding funding updates, we did not get the Green Economy Fund grant that we applied for. That was for the manufacturing pilot program for returning citizens or people with criminal records. But we do have, working with Water Genome Project, they do have other private money that we're using to still do that pilot, hopefully in October. And we're meeting with plumbers and pipe fitters later today as a site visit as potential place for that pilot training program. Planning department continues to send and share with us other grant opportunities related to workforce development. So currently we're managing with funding. I wanted to thank everybody who attended the Summer Youth Employment Program picnic last week. There was very great Board of Supervisors representation. So thank you all for being there. At least 2 of those young people have been offered consistent employment with their employer, which is wonderful. And thanks to Don Lehman for the press release that went out about that celebration. That funding, as Gretchen mentioned earlier, is from Temporary Aid for Needy Families. It is national funding, and there are summer youth employment programs across the country. We've been doing this for decades, so we are keeping an eye out to make sure that that funding is still available next summer, as we know what a valuable program that is for our community. Just to mark your calendars and to ask for you to help with your networks. You may have seen our annual hospitality workforce celebration is transitioning from Six Flags, as it was the last 3 years, to Lake George Steamboat Company on September 8th as a free boat ride for 500 of our hospitality, retail, tourism workers. We have several businesses and community leaders who have helped cover the cost of the boat ride, but we are still looking for sponsors to help cover the cost of food. We don't want the workforce to have to pay for their food on the celebration of them. So wanted to share that publicly for people to share with their networks for any businesses or organizations that wish to help sponsor the cost of food. We are getting a ton of prize donations from local businesses, which is wonderful. For all of the award categories. For example, the Frank Dietrich Hospitality Management Award is one of those. And then there's also free raffle prizes. So we're still accepting donations for that event on September 8th, and people are registering online and nominating their colleagues and supervisors online. And then finally, in prepping for the fall, we have 2 job fairs in October. working with Department of Labor. One is general and tradition now is at Crandall Library, but for the first time, we are doing a big healthcare job fair in October at the Glens Falls YMCA. So we are excited about that. Healthcare continues to be one of the industries that has the most need and will be long-term. So having a job fair specifically for healthcare industry and those organizations is really pivotal and critical. And those are my main updates around workforce development, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the committee? The Summer Youth Employment Program celebration was awesome. There was many community leaders there, even state legislators and Gretchen, and we got cooked for by OC's chef, and just, you did a terrific job, terrific keynote speaker.
Yeah.
Let's stop there for any public comment before we go into the planning department agenda. Liza or Gretchen, if anybody wants to peel off, did you want to say something?
Just, I wanted to add two things, and since Jim just walked in, there might be opportunity, we're talking about workforce housing, there might be opportunity when we look at the redevelopment, so the Essex Avenue, I know there's discussions in Saratoga County about that property being sold. There's the Glens Falls cement property. I'm not sure about the environmental problems related to those, but at the same time, the counties might be able to join forces to be able to collaborate on, if you want to develop that property, we would like to have a workforce housing component. And I offer up, if anybody wants to research Whittier, Alaska, it's a little place that you have to go through on a train. You either have to go there by boat or you have to go through a 7-mile rock tunnel to get through it by train. But it was an old army installation. And so in order to support the tourism, and they have boats coming in that offload 3,500 people at a pop to go into this little tiny town of Whittier. But in order to staff that, the hotels and all the retail, they repurposed the barracks. And it is a city within a city. It's very remote. And they have everything there. So they have living quarters, but they also have daycare centers. They have the education right there. Everything that somebody can need to survive through an Alaska winter and the rest of the year is in that facility. And they have walking tunnels from that in the winter because the weather is pretty severe from that housing and all the other services that someone needs to survive, and then the retail organizations. But it would be interesting to read as we look at workforce housing and opportunities for us. It's a different model. I know New York is very different. We're highly regulated. It's not the same as Alaska, but it's an interesting concept. So my 7 years on the planning board will not allow me to stop thinking about things like this. So
Any other public comment? All right, if anybody needs to peel off before we go into planning department, feel free to. The resolution requests one to amend the county budget to reflect ARPA funding per resolution 260 of 2022. Sarah, do you want to describe that?
Yeah, throughout the ARPA award and administration process, our department has been in partnership with the treasurer's office, Larry's office, auditor's office, pretty much everyone you can throw at it. Administrator's office, we've been administering the ARPA funds. We're just transferring money from an ARPA account to offset some of our administrative salaries for that. And that's actually winding down and will be totally exhausted and done by the end of 2026.
Supervisor Trim. You have a comment, Mr. Trim?
No,
Gotcha.
Gretchen waved hi,
Yep.
but goodbye, I waved goodbye.
Those numbers are listed in our packet. Motion by Supervisor Wild
Sure.
and a section by Supervisor Turner. I'll start questions to Supervisor Wild.
Thank you. Ethan, how did we do with the ARPA funding? Do we have to provide anything back to the government?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We're providing stuff back on a quarterly basis. Basically, we track the performance of every single award And so we have like two levels of control. We have an internal control, and then we also have an external US Treasury control.
The question was, do you expect to return money to our federal?
Oh,
funds?
money? No, no, we made sure of that. Yeah, we're not giving that back. Yeah, that's,
We spent everything.
yeah, that's not happening.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
want to make sure.
Yeah, no, and that's, thanks to, like I said, there's an entire team of departments working on this to make sure that that's spent effectively.
You were talking about the.
Yeah.
Other questions on request one? I'll call the question. All in favor of approving resolution request number one, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries into number two, request to enter into a memorandum of understanding with Soil and Water regarding GIS. Sarah, good morning.
I'll make the motion.
Got a motion from Supervisor Stroud, a second from Supervisor Weil. Want to give us a little explanation, Sarah?
Sure. This is just, so we handle all of the licensing for the GIS software for all of the county departments, including soil and water. They got some funding we just cover it out of our budget. However, soil and water got some funding to purchase a couple additional licenses. So we're just going to do an MOU with them so that they can actually pay us for those licenses. Talk to Tammy, and I guess that's the best mechanism for allowing them to pay us for those licenses that they got money for.
Which is also resolution 3.
It's about $1,600 a year.
Yeah.
Any questions from the committee? Discussion. I'll call the question. All in favor of approving resolution request number two, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Number three is to amend and increase the county budget related to what we just discussed.
Yeah, same.
Yep. For the group them together, is there a motion to bring that to the floor? By Mr. Cressida, second by Mr. Wild. Any discussion? All in favor of approving resolution request number three, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Going into number four, enter into a contract with Thriving Hamlets. And I can never say it, Suzo Doty and Associates, Swazo. Who's been selected as the RFP bidder.
Yeah, and this is support funding that we were awarded through the Adirondack Smart Growth Program. It's $60,000 amount not to exceed for technical assistance to support the Hamlet build out and analysis.
For a motion to bring this to the floor.
Quick question, is that lump sum or hourly?
It's hourly, and I think, yeah.
Okay, we'll get the rates for the hourly.
We have, yeah, the rates are, they provided them.
You know them off the top of your head, sir?
It's variable by title,
Yep.
so.
Not to exceed $60,000.
Yeah.
Coming from your budget, not OCTAX or something like that. That's already
Come
been.
from state.
Yeah, it's state funding.
We have a motion to bring this to the floor.
Nancy and John.
Supervisor Turner, Supervisor Stroud, any discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor of approving resolution request number four, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Go into number five, enter into a contract for community development block grant funds related to the septic replacement program.
Okay, last year we were awarded $400,000 to do septic replacements for low and moderate income households. Septic systems need to be designed and approved and go through the local Board of Public Health process. So we put out we solicited, put out a kind of solicitation for an engineering firm that would be able to assist, between 12 and 14 households to this process. We just made our selection yesterday, and we'll have all those details in or the Board of Supervisors meeting. This is using CDBG funds. These aren't county resources that are being deployed for this project.
Somebody like to make a motion to bring this to the floor? First by Supervisor Wild and a second by Supervisor Cressida. Discussion. Mr. Cressida.
So you've chosen, you have 10 to 12 projects already
We have some
Did I get
potential
it?
projects down, but the
Okay.
next step with that one is gonna be to. We're working in tandem with a couple other different CDBG processes in which they release the funds. I think we recently had a public hearing. But we will be going through a process of working with applicants because we've gotten some applicants from the DEC program. who
Yeah.
Don't qualify for that, but if they're low and moderate income households, then we work with them to figure out if they're right fit for the program.
What's the threshold for low to moderate?
I don't have the number off the top of
Okay.
my head, unfortunately.
Usually 80% AMI.
Okay.
It's usually 80% AMI. They use it to default.
Low income people who have houses on the shore of Lake George.
I know, yeah.
You
That's
can move
always,
the contract.
I didn't want to say that, but it's.
We've MJ Engineering at Clifton Park, and they've got good local representation here.
Any other discussion? All in favor of approving resolution request number 5, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Going to number 6, request to authorize to apply for DEC Adirondack Park, Catskill Park Community Smart Growth Program. Funds.
This is a really great program that's targeted for the Adirondacks, so we benefit greatly as a county from this one. Fairly small award caps, but they're effective projects. They don't require a ton of local match. This is authorizing us to submit an application to this program. We have tentatively been working with Dean Kristen up Yonda to see if we can't work on some improvements in that facility.
Can you describe it's 125 with no match or 300 if there is a match?
So 125 would be, it's a project that doesn't have like this sort of transformative impact, but then the $300,000 threshold is for things that are like truly regional and address some of the key program focuses like housing or something.
And depending on the award of that, there would be a sliding local match.
Yeah, there's a sliding local match on that. You receive more points the higher the match.
Somebody like to make a motion to bring this to the floor? A first by Supervisor Turner and a second by Supervisor Stroud. Discussion on number 6. Call the question. All in favor of approving number 6, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries. Go into discussion items.
So we have a brief presentation for you. I think at our last committee meeting, Supervisor Wild and our committee chair had both been interested in sort of a state of our grant activity. So it can be pretty complicated, so we tried to break it down in pretty clear terms in a brief presentation. I think you have that in front of you. There might be one slide slightly modified since then.
Please, enable sharing. It's student center and let you, no, it's not letting me.
So while she's getting that pulled up, there is project updates too. Just a quick note, since the last time we met, we have now an active contract with the New York State Department of State for the Brownfield Opportunity Area Program. So over the next 2 years, we're going to be going through the entire county, work with local municipalities, staff, to determine where we have underutilized and vacant properties that may or may not have real or perceived environmental contamination that is preventing them from being, back on the tax rolls and productive, contributing property to communities. It's going to be a data heavy process, and it's going to be the entry point for a lot of our up county communities to participate in the Brownfield Opportunity Area Program. Town of Queensbury, City of Glens Falls are already benefiting from this program. Basically, you do this preliminary inventory and evaluation of a corridor or an area. You go through a sort of a prescribed planning process, and then that opens up funding opportunities from the state. And I think, both the city is doing a great job with this, and the South Queensbury, BOA around the CB Guiney site is another sort of big win for that program too.
City of Glens Falls was just at the National Brownfields Conference in Chicago because of what they're doing with the BOA now.
Yeah,
Jeff
yeah.
Flagg was there.
Okay, so as promised, the grant funding status update. So our department, we have some focus areas, but we are extremely excited about the fact that over the past couple of years, you all have had the patience with us as we go through this deliberative planning process. Now we have adopted plans in place that give us a clear sense of direction. So comp plan, housing strategy, outdoor rec economy plan, our multi-use trail, modernization activity study, amongst many other local plans. The active grant funding, these are the ones that we have been awarded. Thriving Hamlets, this is our Hamlet build-out analysis. Really excited about this project. Sarah just updated the project website. I encourage you all to check that out if you haven't seen it yet. But we've completed phase 2 of this, in which we now have a really beautiful, huge kudos to Amanda Beck and Sarah Frankenfeld and our GIS staff. This like a beautiful series of interactive maps that actually show all the developable land and environmental constraints within our hamlets. Incredibly powerful tool. Please check it out. Septic replacement program. I think we're all familiar with that. Brownfield opportunity area program. We just mentioned that. Make the connection. This is we've discussed this previously. Roofs for the North Creek Freight House. Series of home rehab, aquatic invasive species, and actually most recently, the local government efficiency waste hauling initiative. This was really great. Tammy DiLorenzo had worked on a shared services plan a few years ago. And then also in our comprehensive plan, we had really strong language that emphasized coordinating on the county level to provide services to municipalities where everyone saves money. So, you know, Kevin and Scott Royal at DPW had worked out this deal where the DPW takes the waste from the local transfer stations and then takes that to the receiving areas. Local government efficiency program awarded us money to buy another truck and staff a driver for 3 years. So pending grant funding, our staff continues to get better at existing programs and expand into new programs. Pretty aggressive this year, and you'll see fairly significant list of applications that we put in. Most of these were through the consolidated funding application that was due on July 31st. In addition to these that are listed here, we also played a key support role in other various applications. So you'll see that the total project costs $3.4 million, the non-local funds, $2.5 million. So that's the federal and state money that we can unlock through these grants. And
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
Ethan, you have this leverage ratio on our handout. That's how much money we get per dollar that we put in.
yeah, it's a blended rate. Yeah. So some of them are 50-50, some are 90-10, but overall, yeah. And the nice thing too, if you look at those grants, the fact that we have adopted plans in place, including things like the culvert inventory and assessment, the comp plan, the housing strategy, we take these plans and we have the confidence as a department to know it's like, hey, everyone here has looked at these, we have a general consensus on these, and to present that to the granting agency. And they say, okay, there's clear direction. This is what these guys want to do. They're not just grabbing money. It's like they're moving in this direction. We're just helping them. And that puts us in a really good position to capture funding. And then for some of the grant opportunities, we're continuing to see new programs out of the Bond Act, Restore Mother Nature Bond Act. We're hoping that we can go after some more culvert funds with this. Now that we have a working inventory and assessment of our county culverts, we hope to tap into this on an ongoing basis, as well as for resiliency upgrades and implementation of like the outdoor rec economy strategic plan. Empire State Development Pro Housing Supply. We work with Supervisor Presido through the CFA process to support the Fort Gage apartments. This is it's a big pot of money that the state's made available. The challenging part with it is that the project minimums are also really high. I think it's a $2.5 million minimum ask. So you have to have a pretty big infrastructure project lined up. It's a bit of a challenge in our up-county communities, but Queensbury, Glens Falls, we've seen Lake George, possibly Warrensburg. This is one to target. If you aren't already pro housing certified, most of you already are. Queensbury's not yet. We can help you if you ever do want to become that, and that opens up those funds. Our staff can walk you through it. Community Development Block Grant Program. They have a pretty flexible pot of money if you can get through the administrative aspects of it, but we're pursuing funds for evaluating the North Creek water distribution system. We've, successfully supported their sewer district. Now, if you have sewer, you also need to have a functioning water district. And there's also other opportunities that Supervisor Garrity is very familiar with the CDBG program. Northern Borders Regional Commission Catalyst Program. We're going to resubmit Fish Hatchery Master Plan. If there's other municipal projects, deadline for letters of intent is coming up, but that's a pretty attractive match on that. Talked about the DEC Smart Growth. The local government records management improvement. This is an exciting opportunity. It sort of, it leapfrogs off of a lot of what Sarah's been doing with GIS and just efficiency of government processes and data management, as well as what we're doing with our planning and zoning group. One of the things that we realize in a lot of our smaller municipalities is that as there's retirements, there's more difficulty hiring new people because there's a mismatch between local salaries and the cost of housing and whatnot, and just an aging population in general. There is a need to improve some of our local record keeping and things that go through like the planning and zoning approval processing. So we anticipate going after money that will allow us to continue to digitize and modernize those systems. Again, this is one of these things where the county's technical capacities, we can serve as, the central point and then help all these individual municipalities together. And then the other one is the Empire State Development County Infrastructure Round 2. This is the one that's funded the North Creek wastewater, or a small part of it. This has been in the budget, the state level. We think it's going to come down the line. They haven't released requests for applications yet, but if it's similar to last year, it would be $1 million cap. If it's a housing supportive application, or capped at $500,000 if it's a more general community development, tourism enhancement, placemaking project. So we anticipate that we'll go through the similar process that we did last year, look through the capital project inventory, communicate with you all. Once this money hits the ground, we'll reach back out to everyone, see where you're at with your projects. But the thing to emphasize with that one is that project readiness, right? So these can be pretty big projects. We have to be able to document match and readiness. So it's always good to be thinking about the projects before the applications are open. That's it for right now.
What's gonna trigger our next housing task force meeting?
So we're looking at mid-September, which is further back than I had hoped, but the reality of the situation is, we scrambled resources to go after funding, and that took priority or organizing the task force meeting in the middle of summer, which again, not the best time to put in any sort of task force meeting in the middle of a Lake George summer. Our topic that we've started developing the agenda for is land banking. We've reached out to Seneca County, Greater Syracuse, or Syracuse Land Bank, and Nicole Justice Green for the North Country Rural Development Coalition. There's been a lot of interest in land banks and land banking in the past. I know, Jim, your group at the EDC talked about this extensively. It's constantly shifting environment, not only for what land banks can do and what they're proving to be able to do across the state, but also with the funding that's made available by the state for land banks. And so by having a few different practitioners from across the state come talk about how they've done it, we can start looking at how we might approach it from a county perspective here.
Any questions before we get comments from EDC? Supervisor Wild?
Ethan, I'm not sure if it's for you or for Jim, but congratulations on the 975,000 for North Creek.
Yeah, we're
That was a good move, but there's still a gap, right? Where do we sit with that? Is the Champlain Lake George Regional Planning Board still working on something for us?
Yeah, the Lake Champlain Lake George Regional Planning Board was pursuing funding opportunities through Empire State Development. They've got a good rapport with that group, and they have communicated and recognized that while there are some backed loans through county OCTACs, the reality of the situation is it still puts a financial strain on a very limited user base there. Yeah, so the Regional Planning Board does have pending funding requests out there.
we have any idea whether we're gonna be successful or that, or whether the county's?
You know, I would talk to Beth Gillis about that one. She'll have a clear idea, perhaps the administrator has a clear idea.
On their board.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, the Regional Planning Board is still waiting. They've been talking to Empire State Development. As we talked about it, there are two separate funding streams that these grants are going to come through ESD. Still optimistic at this time, still no decision downstate has been made.
The other thing to,
Patient.
the other thing to
That
note
would
there,
only-
Mike, is
If I
that,
could just add, yeah, oh, okay, I'm sorry, Jim. You know, we're still gonna have time because the window of the 975 is gonna give us a window before we're gonna have to start paying occupancy tax. So we probably have a couple years that we can continue to apply for grants. You know, it's not gonna wipe out the entire occupancy tax debt at this point, but we're not going to be paying it for several years now. So we have some time to go in for additional grants like next year and the following year.
the project itself, as you know, is underway, but one of the biggest components of it is the estimates for lateral connections to the core system. Those were all estimates based on past experience with networks this size. But it's possible that the project itself will come in below the line as a result of those. And I participate in the bi-weekly sewer meetings. I'm part of the committee. I think probably later this fall, you'll have a sense of whether or not there's a surplus in that. So it could change the overall calculus of the overall.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else from planning department? I keep referring people to your STR website. So as long as that's staying updated.
What's the stats? That's a little lag on it, right?
Yes, that's probably not a topic to bring up right this minute, but.
All right, Jim, do you have a update you want to provide or?
Well, just quickly, couple of things. We had our board meeting this morning. I want to make sure we share some of the pertinent big points. There was a lot of discussion about the mall in the public this week. I need to make sure that everyone here at the county understands the true situation. The mall's been in receivership for several years. Somehow, sometimes the press catches up with that late in the game. During that period of time, the entity that managed it during the receivership was still actively pursuing leases and improvements in the mall, and were modestly successful at it. Earlier this year, someone came in and essentially purchased the note, which was the outstanding debt, which gave them a position where they could, if they chose, to start planning for a position to receive that out of receivership. Well, all that happened this past week was the announcement of when that receivership event is going to occur. So the mall itself is actually probably in the best position it's been in several years. Later this week, the LDC will receive a loan application from ADK Carding, which is looking to repopulate the old Sears store with a fairly extensive project that they've got well underway. So I want to make sure that no one believes that the mall is going backwards, actually going forward. It was the confidence that other things could be developed there that helped shore up investment. And I think there are a number of potential suitors that have expressed interest in potentially taking the mall, but one is in a driver's seat position because they've already purchased the debt. The key to all of this is us maintaining a sense of confidence in that asset so it can continue to produce economic value for not only Queensbury, but for the county. And I'm very confident right now that both the management team that's there and the opportunities that are showing up are on track to do that.
Jim,
Yes.
Supervisor Stroh.
Yes, in multiple discussions with I'll say past ownership, although that's not fully the case right now. We talked about multiple arrangements that would be great improvements for the mall. None of which would be allowed by the lending agency because of the huge liability. So any new ownership and new arrangement is going to be very good, and a lot of the expansion plans that we had for the mall will now be more likely to take place. So this is a good thing for the community, the greater community.
I spoke to James Griffith for quite a bit this week, and he was very optimistic with the future. The mall pays about $200,000 in taxes a year. They have 175, 200 people that work there, and Target is not part of what we're talking about, right? A very successful Target store is a separate parcel and separate ownership, possibly JCPenney's area too.
I believe just Target.
It is separate, even their parking area is separate.
So the CFA process just wound up. That's the state's approach to distributing the multiple, more than 20 programs that ESD oversees for different parts of economic development, some to municipalities and some to public and private organizations. The last 3 years have been relatively modest in terms of the activity of potential applicants, more municipal than private, and not at the same level prior to COVID and ARPA funding. But this year saw a dramatic change. We had a workshop that had nearly 100 people attend where ESD announced their programs. We've had robust interest. We've helped more than 10 organizations either develop an approach to a grant, or sometimes they move forward with a grant and then chose not to take it forward. But we supported the county in their many efforts, more than I think 5 projects that we endorsed. Well, one in particular that I thought was helpful was we teamed with ORDA to support one of the projects that was based in North Creek. And that was the first time that I think we've been able to kind of get multiple organizations to endorse collectively the value of a CFA application. There was 2 private entities that asked for money, and there are 2 entities that are already in process with ESD. So that total activity is greater in the last year than in the previous 3 years combined. That's a very good sign for the return of not only these traditional forms of economic development, but just the robustness of response. I want to apologize, or the reason I was late coming to the meeting is our website is down. We're under some kind of denial of service attack right now, and I'm working with our IT group to try to resolve it. But if any of you are trying to access us that way, we're not available to you right now. There was recent federal legislation that just quietly passed that changes the opportunity zone approach, which was legislation that was more than 10 years old. That was designed to provide tax incentives to entities that created new enterprises in distressed areas. The change is primarily to create greater applicability to rural areas, and it also dramatically changes the incentives. So it used to be that you could get somewhere between 10 and 25% reduction in capital gains tax as a part of participating. You can now get full relaxation, 100% release of capital gains tax. That's designed to incent development in these areas. There are 2 opportunity zones currently in Warren County. One is a portion of Glens Falls, and the other is the entire township of Johnsburg. So we are working right now to try to reaffirm that those entities will stay eligible. It's not clear whether or not their underlying economics will continue to support the criteria. We've also engaged an outside entity who will help us strategize once we do define what are applicable areas. How would we lobby with the state to ensure that we get the maximum amount of opportunity zones maintained here in Warren County? This won't take effect until 2027. So the majority of the activity will be in 2026. We're trying to get in front of that. If anybody has any questions about that, though, I'm happy to answer them. The last thing I wanted to share with you is our annual luncheon, which is kind of our time where we share not only the year's accomplishments, but continue to lay out our strategy and agenda, is going to be Monday, October 27th at Fort William Henry. And we're bringing a speaker in from Fargo, North Dakota, where they have just recently won the award that Walmart provides for revitalization in new and novel ways, economically developed communities. So the architect of all of that, that's been working on that for more than 10 years, is a gentleman named Greg Tavon. And Greg Tavon, you can find him on YouTube. He's been articulating what he believes to be the new approaches that work better in economic development, one of which is taking the assets that you have and building around those rather than attempting to take businesses that everyone can compete for and focus on that. That is the core of our strategy, which is to use place as our main asset. And so I think this will be engaging. I encourage all of you, if you can, to make it. It's a Monday, Fort William Henry, standard luncheon time. We'll get the detailed information out in the coming days. There's a lot more that we could share, but I want to keep it short.
Yes. It's interesting about opportunity zones. They're, I think, based on census tract data, right?
Yes.
Any other comments from the committee?
A quick question.
Yeah. Supervisor Castillo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When you talk about the capital gain savings in certain zones, is that similar to like a 1031, or is it, how does that work? Money, if you sold a piece of property and invested in that zone, you wouldn't pay capital gains, or like?
The design of the program is to get enterprises to set up nexus in these distressed areas.
Okay.
Then if you invest in a property and you spend, I believe the threshold is 50% of the purchase value over the life of your management of that, and then you were to liquidate or transfer ownership of that, 100% of the capital gains would be relieved. Magic Johnson made it in fortune doing this in Los Angeles. It was primarily an urban program before. So the goal is to try to see if we can make it a little more applicable to areas like ours. I definitely can think of opportunities that could grow in either of those two areas. And of course, we're looking to make sure that there aren't other pockets of Warren County that apply. Unfortunately, our success at elevating our median incomes relative to our peers may work against us here, because it's usually not only a threshold of can you meet the federal criteria, but then they rack and stack you against the other areas to see which are the most distressed. We probably won't stand up on that list, but I think our best bet will be to try to preserve at least the ones we have.
I thought the Census Bureau delineates special land use census tracts with large tracts of area with virtually nobody living there, like a airport or a national park or something like that. Those usually were qualified opportunities.
They were previously, yeah, and we're having somebody who's much more expert at the criteria than us help us evaluate both our maps and the likelihood of maintaining the ones we have and developing any new ones. I'll have more to report in a coming meeting.
Any public comment? Motion to adjourn? Supervisor Stroh, Supervisor Wild, all in favor?
Thanks.
Any